all right, I will accept that. And it looks like we're going to get started today. Thanks so much for joining, folks. Welcome to our webinar. This is a webinar hosted by the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. This is part of our fight against data-driven policing. And the name of this webinar is the Police State Gentrification and Displacement. My name is Tiff, or T. Guerra. I use they and them pronouns. I have been a part of this coalition for about 5 years and very much involved in this fourth Tuesday fight, the fight against data-driven policing. Really glad that folks could join us. And at this point, I will just hand it over to Hamid briefly. Hamid, would you possibly do us the honor of, if you know how many webinars this is in our series, what the number of this webinar is, and perhaps go over just a few of the agreements that we have for this, this meeting space on Zoom?
Sure, Tiff, thank you so much. Hey, everybody, good evening. My name is Hamid Khan, he, him, with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. And today is webinar number 71. We've been having these online meetings in lieu of in-person meetings that we've been holding for the last several years at our home in Skid Row at Los Angeles Community Action Network. And last year, because of COVID, we had to pivot and then started this online meeting. So since March 24th of 2020, this is our 71st webinar. Basically, we may have missed about 2 or 3 Tuesdays, but going on consistently, hanging in there. This is a continuing process of us decolonizing knowledge, building power, doing a lot of collective learning, and then building that strategic partnership, this thought partnership and action partnership. Hopefully, we've been exploring how could we then have some sort of a hybrid system where we can go back in person and also maintain the online presence as well. But, this Delta variant now has taken sort of the better of some of the plans that we had. But hopefully, we'll be back in person soon. Just a couple of things. We are kind of holding off on opening up the mics. We've had our little bit of a share of Zoom bombing. But please, if you have a question or something or a comment, there's a hey, raise your hand feature in there, or you can also reach us through the chat box as well. But as the conversation flows, we'll be opening up the mics, and just wanted to make sure that we maintain the integrity of the space. And this is being recorded, and it's going to be uploaded on our website, www.stoplapdspying.org, hopefully by this Saturday. And you can go to stoplapdspying.org/webinars. So with that, I want to hand it back over to Tiff.
Right on. Thank you, Hamid. So we are going to go over the agenda next. Again, thanks so much, folks, for making the time tonight. But before we go over the agenda, we did just want to name some of the additional fights that the coalition is engaged with. So on the first Tuesday of the month, we do have meetings every Tuesday evening, 6 p.m. So the first Tuesday of the month, we do have a meeting about gender and sexuality, and that is looking at how folks are surveilled and policed, and sometimes even how we are policing each other through the lens of gender and sexuality. So that is what that first Tuesday night meeting is about. The second Tuesday of the month, we have the fight against the war on youth, and that looks at how youth are being targeted and attacked by such programs as CVE, which is countering violent extremism. And then on the third Tuesday, we do have the general coalition meeting. And on the fourth Tuesday of the month today, that is our data-driven policing. So those are some of the meetings that we have. We also have working groups. These Tuesday night meetings are open to the public. So yes, please join any of them as you like. And we would love to hear from folks, so please get in touch with us if you'd like to get involved or learn more or get engaged. So with that, we will move into some of the topics that we're going to be covering today. So on our agenda today, we are the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. And as such, we are part of our work is in looking at how folks are surveilled. And our fight in data-driven policing is in looking at how LAPD surveils folks and gathers information on folks, and how this has always happened, and how this is historically and presently happened to folks that are Black, folks that are unhoused and poor, brown folks, indigenous folks, folks that are disabled, queer and trans folks. So understanding that that this is mostly experienced by this same group of folks consistently. This is who is considered suspicious and who is criminalized. And so what we are interested in a coalition is understanding more about how this is being justified through data-driven policing. Because what we're seeing with LAPD is how with data-driven policing, police use that premise of gathering data and using a data analysis to say where they're going to target and who they are going to target. And really, this is just a justification of the policing and the surveillance and the tracking and the harassment of what these same groups of folks, these same communities that have always experienced that violence and that policing and harassment and displacement and dispossession. So that is what is kind of core to our fight here. And that is what we look at historically, and then what we look at currently with such programs as data-informed community-focused policing, which is just the latest name for what LAPD is calling their data-driven policing tactics. And then in addition to that, what we're looking at today and more recently is the addition of such pieces as ordinances like 4118D, which is part of the city's attack on unhoused folks and on poor folks. Again, that has been ongoing. So this is just the most recent attack from the city on unhoused folks, and looking at how police are used to enforce that and how police are used by the city to be gathering information. And that is still something that we are learning about, and something that LA CAN, Los Angeles Community Action Network, where we are housed, very much is leading the way in terms of learning more about that. But that is part of the ongoing uncovering and research that we are doing as well, and understanding in terms of how people are being targeted and how people are being removed from their communities. So that's kind of some of the political landscape in terms of the conversations that we are having and that we're going to be having today. So in terms of our agenda, what we're going to be going through is we are going to be starting by talking about a little bit more about the architecture surveillance. This is a PRA that we did start talking about last time. We didn't spend a whole lot of time on. We do have a little bit more to cover today. And unfortunately, I think that our comrade who has been working on these documents is not going to be able to join us soon to be able to discuss it, but I do have some notes because we thought that might be the case. So I do have some notes and some findings that I can be sharing with us about that. So a little bit about the architecture surveillance and just a few updates on things that we're uncovering in terms of how folks are being surveilled. Following that, we are going to be talking about bids. And we're going to be talking about bids because, and that's business improvement districts. This is part of how folks are surveilled. And so we're going to be, and it's part of the attack on communities. So we're going to be talking about that as well and their collaboration with police. And we're very excited today to be joined by folks from Chinatown Community for Equitable Development. And I believe also folks from LA CAN to be talking a little bit more about the fight against bids and how bids affect and harass folks in the community. So we'll be talking a bit more about that. And then following that, we're going to be talking about something that's kind of on the other side of that, which is the use of art in our movement and in resistance and in our work, and how art is used to uplift, to tell stories, to make connections, to fight back, to disrupt. So that's the conversation that we're going to be having in the third part of our meeting. So that's kind of an overview of the agenda. And I am going to pause. And I'll see if anyone has any questions, and that will allow me also to take a drink of water. So, but yeah, if anyone has any questions, please post them in the chat. Okay, all right, folks. I don't think we've had any questions. So with that, so we are going to talk a little bit more about the architecture of surveillance PRA. And again, I apologize that that our comrade is not here to share some of that in person. But there's two things that we're going to focus on because there was an awful lot covered in that PRA. So this is our PRA that was filed in 2019. We've talked about it numerous times here, so I'm sure folks are familiar. It was filed in 2019 and it was just covering all kinds of things in the architecture of surveillance. So what we've kind of been trying to do is share back here what some of those key findings have been. And we very much would love for folks to get involved with that as well. So yeah, definitely contact us at the coalition. You can send us an email if you'd like to take a look at those documents and get involved in that work. But so some of the things that we are going to talk about, I'll hit on two things today. And let me do a time check as well. Okay. So we're going to talk about two things today. The first will be automatic license plate readers. And I am going to pause here and just check with folks to see before we even start talking about automatic license plate readers to just, if I could check folks's just like understanding of this or awareness or knowledge of what these are already, or perhaps if folks have seen them or experienced them. So yeah, does anyone, and it's okay also if you just don't feel like talking or sharing, that is completely okay. But yeah, does anyone maybe have an understanding of what automatic license plate readers are or have any experiences with them?
Hi all, I'd love to chime in on this part. My name is Mariela and I'm happy to join the conversation tonight. Automatic license plate readers make me think of a moment when I was with somebody who had their car missing all of a sudden, and it was towed, and it was a result of an automatic license reader from some van, some white van that was like kind of unmarked, in front of a school where we were working at, and that led to, of course, high costs and all the getting intricate with the system of the city taking cars and their business and all that. I'll leave it at that. Thanks for the space.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Mariela. And welcome, Pancake. And I'll just pose that question again. So we're just about to be talking about automatic license plate readers, ALPRs. And this is something that is used by LAPD, has been used for a long time. First started being used, I believe, around 2004, and that was a donation through the Police Foundation. And these were first, or maybe not first, but one of the first places they were used was in Skid Row, which is not an unusual way for LAPD to debut their tactics. So yeah, just does anyone else have anything they wanted to like share or any knowledge about ALPRs before we talk a little bit more about those?
One thing, I think in addition to like how Mariela described them being kind of attached to like vans and stuff, is there's a lot that are just set up or maybe even attached like the kind of public surveillance cameras. And so, you know, any cars that pass in front of them get identified, and then that's without actually putting a tracker on your car, it has kind of a similar function of they can piece together, oh, your car appeared here, your car appeared here, your car appeared here. So, you know, in addition to the police being able to identify, pull up information on a car when they see it, they can also kind of create a map of everywhere that a car has traveled, and so everywhere that you've traveled.
Yep, that's absolutely right. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And
more recently, there were reports that, oh, I'm sorry, Pancake, go ahead.
Yeah, Pancake, we see you. Did you want to share?
Boy, there it is. Is that better? Hello, everybody. What do we say to data-driven policing?
Shut it
Shut it
down.
Shut it down.
Yeah. My comment. ALPR. Is that correct? Automated license plate readers. I have seen at times when motorists be detained if you're from out of state. You know, if you have one plate, you know, like California 2 plates, you know, you got other places in the country you only require, I think there only one plate, rear or front plate. But I've seen instances where motorists are detained just because you're out of state. You know, they quick, you know, put a little bit more attention paid to you. So I just wanted to mention that out of state plates. And I've seen, you know, when you're driving and they're right close, the pigs are right close to behind you. You know, I don't know if any of you out there have been detained by a law enforcement officer, pulled over, lights blinking, they run your plates, boom, boom, boom. Have you ever got a trap? Boom, they run that, then they go from there. So anyway, that's what I wanted to input. And you know how it is, you guys out there, you know. The whole system. Oh yeah. How about bicycles? If you don't have a plate, do you run your plate? Do you have to have a tag, you know, register your bicycle? Have you ever seen that's what I'm saying. That's what I want to put out there. Take it from there, Tiffany and Ahmed. Thank you.
Thank you, Pancake. That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. And maybe someone here does know that answer. I know that they take pictures of your vehicle regardless of if it has a plate. So yeah. Thank you so much, Pancake. Comment?
Yeah, just wanted to share as well about the license plate. So Vigilant Solution is the big company that provides that service, and they have a major contract with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. So along with the Palantir, which is a data processing company, a lot of this information gets processed and it's accessed by various law enforcement agencies, federal agencies, and more recently there were reports where Pasadena Police Department and Long Beach Police Department were sharing information as well. And then, you know, during these massive raids that were going on over the last 2 or 3 years, you know, that's exactly to what Shakir was saying, that they were just tracking and following, and they had placed license plate readers in particularly where immigrant communities would be congregating at a shopping center or, you know, other places. Campuses have been using license plate readers quite a bit. You know, just out here in Southern California, in Orange County, some of the main malls, even the mall around University of California, Irvine. So license plate readers are used quite a bit in around the country.
Yeah, thank you so much, folks, for that collective sharing of knowledge. Yeah, so we can we'll talk a little bit more about some of what the findings were, and I'll just kind of echo what folks have already said in terms of like in terms of what the automatic license plate reader is for what LAPD uses, and I forget the name of the brand, but they and was confirmed in our PRA documents. So they have a system that Palantir is a system that LAPD uses. It is a data analysis. It kind of pulls data from different databases and it does analysis and generates mission sheets and like activities, and allows whichever organization is using it to kind of file reports and like set goals. And so it's kind of this this center for data pulling and storing and analysis is what Palantir is. And it's something that's very widely used. I'm sure folks are very familiar with it though, as I over explain it. But so essentially, with the automatic license plate reader, Palantir launched something in 2014, and it was something that LAPD started then that was called Palantir Thunderbird, and that has an ALPR piece within it. So the license plate readers that are on LAPD cars and that are fixed out in neighborhoods as well are taking pictures of places they go by and scanning them, and that information was going directly into the Palantir system and into LAPD databases. And once it's part of that Palantir system and in that LAPD database, as Hamid indicated, it is then part of this larger data sharing environment, because additionally what we know through documents obtained is that LAPD doesn't just, share data amongst themselves, but since about 2012, I believe they were on a contract with the sheriff, the LA sheriff, that started out with just being LAPD and the sheriff, and I think Long Beach police as well. And then within a few years had become over 65 different agencies. They're all clustered around each other, local agencies, police departments, law enforcement agencies that are now sharing this information. And this is really important for us to know because, yes, as Hamid said, it's like sometimes police will say, oh, well, we don't do that, or we have this policy in place, which of course is meaningless anyway on its own. But then once you're sharing all of this information, and if you have access to that data, and other police departments may not have those same policies or restrictions, well then, yeah, so it doesn't really, like those barriers are gone. And of course, we know that the police are not following those policies anyway. So that's a little bit about ALPRs. And I can also go over some of the specifics. So some of the specifics that Jenny pulled out, and let me also just check some of these comments as well. Yeah, in Fresno, they would. Nick, did you want to say any more about that? Okay, so I'm just reading that comment. Oh, he said I will. Okay, Nick, were you able to unmute and share any more about that, or? Okay, I'll just keep going at this time. Or I'm not sure if you're able to comment now, or we can just keep going as well. Okay, I think I'll just keep going then. But essentially, let's see. So Jenny just calls out some of the loopholes, and so essentially, yeah, they have this this policy. And again, so ALPRs is something that LAPD has been using since 2004, but I believe it was December 2020 that they actually put a policy in place. So since then, they have just been gathering all of this information. As Jenny noted in her research, there are tons of loopholes as to reasons why that data would not be deleted. So it does get retained because they say, like LAPD says, the data is retained for 2 years and then is logically deleted unless it has evidentiary value. And even when it's logically deleted, what that means is that it still actually can be retained. It isn't actually deleted. So it's kind of just a cover. Officers are encouraged to keep any ALPR data hard copies. They claim to permanently delete after 5 years, but many records are retained indefinitely. And this is something that we've also heard from LAPD themselves as well. They speak very glowingly about ALPRs as a way that folks can be tracked many years after that initial scanning of the plate. So you can scan a person's plate in 2005 and still be tracking that person 5 years later. So that is some of the information that we got. And then I did want to share one of the maps that we got from Operation Laser. This was from a PRA that we did to get mission sheets. And either Hamid or Shakir, I sent you an email that has a that has a map attached, and I believe it says LPR scan. Did you receive that, Hamid?
So I got your email, but the scan wasn't, the image wasn't showing up. I don't know.
Oh. Well, maybe I'll just describe it. Okay, well, that'll be something I'll have to share in the future, but essentially, yeah. So what it is what we found is similar to what Shakir was explaining and folks have been explaining, is that you can see from looking at some of the mission sheets that LAPD that we've gotten from LAPD, that and this one was from Hollenbeck Division, and this the area, it was pretty much a map of the neighborhood, and then in specific zones they were shaded in, and it was LPR was written on it, and it had missions pointing to that area, meaning send a car through and scan, and that was the mission. And you could see this in specific zones. And what was interesting to see was that I believe one of those was either overlapping with or directly on one of the community safety partnership sites. So what this tells us is just that, yeah, that very much the license plate readers, they're not just set up in different locations and kind of gathering information as cars go by and getting it that way, but it's very much, you have a mission, it is to go out and scan all of the cars in this area, and to be, so that we're knowing who is here and that we have that information for that day and time. And then that's a way that that LAPD is keeping records of folks. So yeah, so that is something that those are some of the pieces that we're kind of putting together from some of these different PRAs in terms of how folks are being tracked and how it's happening over time. So yeah, so that was a little bit about LPRs or ALPRs. Did anyone have any questions or anything additional to share about those? Okay, and with that, we will move into, so the next thing that we wanted to talk about that we learned from our architecture of surveillance PRA, and I do see a little more information being shared here in the chat, so I'll just read that. In Fresno, an individual did an anonymous article in a newspaper of police doings, ultimately was found murdered. I see. I see. I'm not sure if you're able to say anything more about that, Nick. But thank you for sharing that information. Okay, folks. So what we'll do now is we are going to move on to talk a little bit about some of the information that we are learning about LAPD's current system of data-driven policing, and that is called data-informed community-focused policing. And specifically, we were looking at the information that we received about the ACCICs. And I should have written down what that stands for. Area Community, I can't remember. ACCICs. Community Crime Information Center, that's it. Area Community Crime Information Center. And we know that these acronyms and these names that they give them are somewhat bullshit, which is why I think I didn't learn the entire thing properly. But essentially, so what these are the centers that LAPD has at the division level. So LAPD has 21 divisions, and these are the division level information center where they are doing that data-driven policing crime analysis. And that's kind of how they have it framed. And it sounds very special and like they're doing some serious work on their data analysis when they give it that special name, ACCICs. So what was really interesting to learn about in the documents was how really this just refers to the police station. So the ACCICs are not, in a special location. They are, as some of us I think already suspected, they are just the police stations. They just have a few people doing some crime analysis. And essentially, it's the exact same thing that was going on under previous data-driven programs. It was specifically the exact same thing that was going on under Operation Laser, which was a predictive policing program that we did shut down. And essentially what happened was after that was shut down and after they launched this new program, Moore sent out a memo in August of 2020 saying essentially to just that everyone just had to change all the paperwork to replace the old name of those data centers that they had with Operation Laser and now call them ACCICs. So, and I say all this because when folks are probably not familiar with that term, it's not something that we hear a lot. It is something that gets used by like more in police commission meetings. It's what they use when they're trying to make it sound special and like they are doing something new and you know, forward thinking. But it's very much, it's just the same old thing. It's data analysis. It's this veneer of data analysis to justify them going out and continuing to surveil and continuing to police these same areas, but under this new guise of you know, information coming from the ACCICs. So yeah, so essentially that just refers to the police departments and the analysis that's going on there. And let's see what else we found out is, okay, and a little bit more about the ACCICs. So the function of the ACCICs or those data analysis centers is to generate like the missions or the orders that are then carried out by police in that area. So again, this is very similar to Operation Laser. These ACCICs are the ones that put together what's called the SARA project, which is again, something that's carried over from Operation Laser. And it's essentially them going to an area, looking around for so-called signs of crime and disorder, and then saying, this is the solution for it, and kind of mapping out what is the LAPD response to that going to be. And that's going to be in the form of issuing tickets or issuing sweeps or ordering more surveillance. These are some of the responses that come out of that analysis. We do know that I believe 90 NEAs have been established already. NEAs are the neighborhood engagement areas, and these are specific points that are determined by the ACCICs to be the most likely sources of crime and disorder. So these are some of the things that we've been learning from that information. And yeah, and there was other information too, but those were some of the things that stood out. And the only other thing was that we found that a SARA project was supposed to be carried out for, like initially they said that this should only be in place for 6 to 9 months, but if they do an assessment at the end of that, they can determine that that is just going to continue. And the reason why this stood out to myself was because one of the criticisms that came from Operation Laser, which is where you had laser zones formed, and these were these areas that police determined were to be high in crime. They were overly policed, they were overly surveilled, or excessively policed, even more surveilled. Was that you were going to be bombarding the same area over time. And so LAPD said, well, we'll do something where we're doing a bit of a turnover, we're moving them around there, it shouldn't be so bad. And so what we're seeing, no, again, it's the same thing where the same areas are going to be targeted, and they're saying, well, it's just going to be for 6 to 9 months, but no, it can be extended. So these are some of the things that we've been learning. We are going to be learning more about the specific locations of where those neighborhood engagement areas are, but as far as where those ACCICs are located, there isn't really any mystery about that. It's just the police departments in each division. And I'll just pause for a moment and see if folks have any questions about that. I know that was kind of a lot of jargon, and we are going to try to keep talking about data-informed community-focused policing because it is very jargony, and we're trying to kind of, you know, I guess kind of get around that, or just start getting more familiar with that language, and also start like desensationalizing it and calling it what it is. But yeah, if folks have questions or thoughts about this, I'll just pause there for a moment.
Hey Tiff, I have a question. We don't know the locations we just know kind of how many there are, right? We don't know where they are.
Are you talking about for the NEAs, the neighborhood engagement areas? Or the
Those two, yeah. Well, I was thinking about the ACCICs, but also the neighborhood engagement areas, I guess.
well, the ACCICs are just the police departments. So we already know what they are.
Oh, they're like kind of in every division.
Yeah, I mean, you look at where's the cop station in, 77th or in Central, and that's where it is. So, which makes, logistically makes sense, because why, it's not like they're going to go build a different, they wouldn't have something out house. But I think it's just funny because when you hear about ACCIC, I don't know about you all, but I'm like, ooh, there's this thing and it's somewhere and we don't know where it is. And it's like, well, no, it's the same fucking place. So yeah.
Word.
Any other thoughts or comments on that?
And yeah, it might be, when you put it that way. I mean, I know like with Operation Laser, they had these like crime intelligence details at every I don't know if it was like every station, but at least every division. And it was probably just like a couple cops sitting around, or like not even like, it's not even a space as much as like a guy who like produces like a hit list or a map or some shit. And so here too, it's probably again just like some racist police officer sitting somewhere, maybe a couple of them or something, and they're like looking over some stuff, but it's like described as this area crime intelligence center to make it sound like this like sophisticated data driven thing, when they're just sitting around targeting the same people that they always wanted to target.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I was thinking too about how, like, even with the whole analysis thing, it's such a sham, because it's like when we're like, well, send us that data analysis and send us those crime reports because we want to see. And it's like, and then they send them to you and they'll be like these boxes and they're like, this is how many crimes were reported in this month versus last month versus this time last month. And there's never any kind of, there's never anything. There's not, so it's just so, it's just, it's like it's just a bunch of bullshit. And it's the same type of analysis that they've been doing for however many years, coming from CompStat, and talking about it this way. None of that is meant to say that it's not deadly, and not violent and harming folks and sucking up all of the city's resources. But it is, it is. I feel it's important for us to be understanding that, which I believe folks already knew, that when they have these names on it, that it's to just be calling that out and to be saying, yeah, it's not that, it's this, and it is actually the exact same thing. And when they're talking about the Sarah project, and when they're trying to make it sound like that's new, oh, that was actually something that Operation Laser was supposed to prove that the Sarah project worked, and that method of doing surveillance and analysis and response and assessment, like doing that to reduce crime, that the whole thing was to say, oh, this is something that works. And it's like, well, no, that program was shut down because it was so harmful to communities. They couldn't justify it on any level, even by the attorney general, the OG. I can't remember his name, but even by their own standards, they couldn't even justify it. So it's just, I think it's just calling out these lies when we kind of uncover these things and just kind of see these patterns. So and I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on that as well. And welcome to folks that are just joining. How much of this data is shared Yes, thank you, Hamid. ACCICs are their version of local fusion centers. All of that is gathered, stored, and shared. Yeah, absolutely. So the fusion center, when we were talking earlier about that list of law enforcement agencies that share information, the fusion center, JRIC, I believe it's called, Joint Regional Intelligence Center, that is one of the things on that list. So that is sharing all of this information as well. Yeah, and we see what a low bar it is to have your data get into those systems, right? You just need to be parked in certain neighborhoods and you start to get tracked. Yeah. Any other comments or questions on that part? And we are going to be moving into the bids to talk about bids after this. So yeah, if anyone had any additional questions about that architecture of surveillance part, and I do apologize again that Jenny wasn't here to talk about it, because Jenny probably would have had some more details. But yeah, we look forward to when Jenny can join us next time as well.
And Tiff, I think you mentioned it already, or you kind of spoke a little bit about it, but I think just one thing that I kind of just want to kind of just address is like the reason why they're given these names too, because we know that, like, even with Sarah, right, because we know that they're a continuation of similar programs, and they're just, it's essentially just reformed programs. And I think the part of it, I think part of their plan or protocols in creating these names and just having these like programs that they're like experimenting on is as a way of also not having accountability, because they can say, okay, well, we're no longer going to do this program, or we're going to jump into another program, but it's the same, even if it's a different title. I think because they're changing that, and because they change that frequently and say like, oh, it's under a new program, it's something that continues. But it's a legacy of reform, and it's just something that it continues to strengthen with the partners, the city, as well as the DA as well, in like litigating civil like lawsuits and other what is it, civil litigation is what they call it.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Okay, and unless we have any other comments or questions on this part, I think we'll move into the section to talk about bids. All right, and I'll just do a time check. Okay. Okay. All right, so yeah, so for our next section, we are going to be talking about bids, more business improvement districts. And we're talking about this because as we know, bids are a part of LAPD's architecture of surveillance. They are how folks are surveilled and policed. Bids work very tightly with LAPD. And instead of having myself talk about it more, I am going to pass it over to folks who know a lot more about it and who have on the ground experience fighting against bids, and who have been the ones to identify what is going on and what are some of the tactics. And I believe that I did see General Dogon with us, and I do hope that that's the case. Do I?
Yeah, we just lost him. He should be coming back.
Okay. Well, I hope that's the case. Hamid, did you want to talk a little about, like, can you tell us a little about just like what is a bid, and just like, did you want to do that for us while we wait for Dogon to come back?
Yeah, bids were, oh, there, hang on a second, I think. Let me just, there he is. As he is.
All right, and welcome, General Dogon. I'm not sure if you're, I'm not sure how your connection is, or if you're able to hear us and to join. I was just letting folks know that we're going to be talking about bids now. And we would love to have you, as someone who has been very much part of that fight and leading that fight back against bids, share with folks something about that fight and how folks downtown and yourself have been have been affected by bids. Is that something that you're able to talk about at this time? Okay, and I'm not sure that Dogon is going to be able to talk about it. What we may do, and I'll check in with Pancake as well. I know we also do have Victoria with us. We're really excited to have one of our partners from CCED, Chinatown Community for Equitable Development, with us as well. But I'll just perhaps check in. Pancake, I'm not sure, is this something that you might want to talk about in terms of the downtown?
The business improvement districts,
Yes.
the BIDs, right?
Yeah, that's
what I've seen, they're contracted, the merchants, they pay a fee for the BIDs to kind of keep watch of their businesses as such, and any undesirables, to kind of move them out, and, I've seen them around. They got the greens, yellows, reds, in areas like the Arts District, Fashion District, et cetera, yellows. And I've seen them at times detain folks. They're just like our houseless neighbors. They just stand right there. And I've heard like the language. There's one time when I saw and witnessed with my own eyes, one of our houseless folks was kind of lying down next to a parking lot, and this BID agent, he kicked him. He wasn't trying to wake him up because the gentleman was already woke. So little things like that, that they get away with, think they're the police, and, they lack sensitivity training and talk to you like, they are hard, real hard. And these are some of the BIDs. So this is what their purpose are. They're the eyes for LAPD. And these are the bids, some of their behavior. What I have noticed, those that have been deployed in certain areas, there's the merchants, they pay the capital, for them to kind of watch out for the business, move them out because they're hurting my business, so forth and so on. So that's, I think, what I want to share. If anything else comes to mind, I will unmute myself and get your attention, raise my hand. Thank you.
So Tiff,
Yeah,
just real quickly, oh, sorry, go ahead. My bad.
please go ahead, Hamid.
No, I just wanted to say, and of course, Mamta is here too, and Victoria is here too, so they can talk more. But I can just say that these are private entities that are really funded by local property assessment taxes, and they and operate as nonprofits. So they are basically there to quote unquote in business areas, especially downtowns, to manage the space, to maintain order, if you will. So there's close to about, I would say, and I can't remember right now, there was a report that our comrades up in the Bay Area, the Western Regional Advocacy Project, WRAP, had done back about 2 or 3 years ago, in which they identified that how bids are collecting millions and millions of dollars, about 200 of those of them, the entities, and they have been pretty active. So let me just, I think I saw Dogon back. I don't want to speak too much on what Dogon was going to speak about, but Dogon, can you hear us? Can you unmute yourself? Dogon, can you hear us? I guess maybe we can go to Victoria. So
Yeah, thanks very much, Hamid. Yeah, and I'm sorry that we're not able to hear General Dogon, and know he took the time to call in. Yeah, Victoria, if you are ready, we would love to have a little bit more of a conversation with you and the work of CCED about what it is that your organization does and is doing with community there in Chinatown, and what your experiences have been like. Is that something that you would be able to talk about at this time?
Sure. So just for context on CCD first, we are Community for Equitable Development. We work with residential and also commercial tenants to prevent displacement. And as we've been doing that displacement work, we have come up again and again against the Business Improvement District in Chinatown, led by George Yu, who owns Macau Investment Corporation, and also the Far East Plaza where Howland Rays is at, if anyone has been there or knows the Chinatown area. Here's a quick zine that we've made about the Chinatown bid specifically, and our experiences with them. I know that bids work differently in different spaces, and maybe Kaylin or Benjamin at RAP can talk more about how bids are working nationally in the research that they've done, because we've worked with them as well. But in Chinatown, the bid is paid for and created by property owners, and most property owners in Chinatown are hidden behind LLCs or are owned by, we do have some that are owned by family trusts, but as development has been occurring within the past 10 years, more and more property within the bid has been sold to large-scale property developers, and they are the ones who can vote to establish or disestablish the bid. And so there's no, mechanisms for any type of community input, because although they do hark a lot on the fact that they are created by the community in the neighborhood and supported by the neighborhood, even though most of these property owners don't actually live in Chinatown, or even, no, most of them are international or nationally created LLCs. So the Chinatown bid was recertified in 2020, and that's our most recent experience organizing against them. As you can see in the bid, we've had multiple experiences talking to houseless folks and even to our own volunteers, small business owners that have experienced harassment by both the red shirts, which are the security forces in Chinatown, and also by George Yu, who is the director of the Business Improvement District. He's shown multiple times that he wants to eradicate all houseless folks, houseless presence from Chinatown, and the bid works as his policing arm for that by closely collaborating with LAPD, but also by actively harassing houseless residents and also street vendors, which are very apparent and well known in Chinatown, and has been a big part of Chinatown's history. So when we were organizing against the bid, what we were realizing is the people who actively operate, live in, work in the neighborhood don't have much power to really do anything about the bid, because property owners have the right to vote to create them. And in the most recent recertification, even the Chinatown bid failed to receive the number of necessary petitions by property owners to actually be created or be recertified. So what happened was the city, specifically city planning, and also we found from Gil Cedillo's office, worked to, instead of recertifying the bid, they just created a new one that had a much lower threshold for its creation. It didn't need 2% plus one petitions of property owners to be created. And so as we were working, we realized the extremely close ties that the city had to maintaining the bid in Chinatown, against the will of residents and against the will of some property owners as well, family associations and other small small families that own property in Chinatown. Once the Chinatown bid actually ended up coming up to a vote, the largest plot of land that actually voted in support of the bid was land by LA City. So the city itself cast a ballot to create a business improvement district that would then be there to support policing, increased policing and increased development in the city. So that was a little bit more of our experience in Chinatown specifically, and what we, the barriers we came up with against when we were organizing, since we realized the massive amounts of collusion between the city and the business improvement district to be created against the will of the neighborhood tenants and the small business. But we're trying to understand more kind of the extent to which private property owners and property developers are colluding with the bid, as well as the LAPD, to really create a larger kind of surveillance state over Chinatown as it's experiencing massive amounts of development and displacement.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, that sounds like very, very in-depth and detailed work that you're involved with there, just in like untangling all of that understanding and how they work. My understanding is you all are also involved in kind of like, as well as doing that research work, you're also kind of involved in building with community and talking with folks about perhaps like alternatives to calling bids, or having how to not have bids be as involved in folks' lives. Can you talk a little more about that?
Sure, yeah. As a major part of our building, our community building against bids, is to learn more about the experiences of the residents. We've had stories by some residents where they would call the bid because they consider them the security force of the neighborhood when they were robbed, or they experienced a crime, and mostly what the bid does is nothing. And we've been actively working with a lot of small businesses to consider alternatives to calling the bid, or alternatives to policing, and how to build community with our houseless folks. So we have a weekly power up with Street Watch to provide food, charging resources to the houseless community in Chinatown. But we also are actively having conversations in both our small business conversations and also in our All Chinatown Tenants Union about how we can reimagine safety for the community, because the bid is there as the pseudo security force, but they also don't, rather than actually provide any safety, they harass tenants and also don't support any tenants as we when they actually do need any type of help. So one experience in particular that some CCD volunteers had was they were just on the street, going about the neighborhood, and they saw an elderly woman fall down and her head started to bleed. And there was a bid officer right there. He was just standing there with his bicycle and his public safety kit that he carries around because he's supposed to be the security force of the neighborhood. And he just stood there and watched her fall, and just stood there as the CCD volunteers had to be the ones to, call for an ambulance, provide translation services because she didn't speak English, help her staunch the bleeding, just as the security force that is being paid by property taxes stand there watching and not really doing much. So that's kind of been what our experiences have as CCD volunteers. Since we have been vocally against the bids, we've also experienced the security forces tailing us as we go do our monthly tenant outreach, where we talk to tenants about their rights. So I guess now it's kind of full circle, where we were organizing against policing and surveillance, and now we're the ones that are being surveilled by the same entities we're trying to end.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm sure a lot of folks here can relate to that as well. Thank you so much for sharing that information. And Victoria, I know that you were, when we spoke earlier, you weren't sure about how, and I asked how we can support, and you weren't quite clear about that. But of course, we can, folks can be following CCED on social media. And I do believe you do have a mutual aid fund that folks could support as well. Is that right? I believe you have one on your website.
Yes, we do have a mutual aid fund that's mostly funded by the community, but also, you know, any donations help, since since a lot of residents in Chinatown are seniors and can't go outside when there's a pandemic. So we provide mutual aid. I think also what's been really useful for us is building a network of other groups that have been researching the bid, especially because it's taken us so much time to untangle this one specific bid that's extremely small, like size-wise, that we don't really even know the extent to what bids are doing in all of Los Angeles, since I think there's like 20, 30 plus here alone. So we've been really fortunate to learn from other groups as well, to really kind of see the patterns and ways that surveillance and anti resident development is ingrained in the infrastructure of what the bid is built to be, and that there's no other possibility than their complete abolition. There's no possibility to reform a bid. So that's also been helpful. But yeah, we do have, we're always welcoming volunteers, since we do have a lot of work that we do, and we're an all volunteer organization. So yeah, those are some ways that people can chip in.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And we'll also see if folks have any questions for yourself. If anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute or put them in the chat perhaps. And I'm just checking the time because I know that I would like for us to, I know we have a number of folks from RAP here, and so I'd like to check in with folks there as well. And I do also want to be able to get to some of the folks that have joined us for the last portion of our agenda today. I know can't stay on for too long. So, but if there aren't any questions for Victoria, then I think we can perhaps check in with Caitlin. You had mentioned that you are a member of RAP and could perhaps speak about bids a bit more as well.
Yeah, that's totally possible. My name is Benjamin. I use he, they pronouns.
And hi, I'm Caitlin, and I use she, her pronouns.
We're members of the Western Regional Advocacy Project and also with Stop Swoops. I did have a question for Victoria, because we've been following the stuff going down in Chinatown, which seemed really horrible. Like I think at the time the president of the bid had a warrant out for his arrest or something, and the city still passed this, and they were the deciding vote. They were the swing leverage point. It just speaks to like very large volumes of corruption. But I was just wondering how we can work with y'all more in the future, because we've connected with groups in DC, and there's other groups around the country starting to organize on this issue. So whatever we can do to support. But also, like, what are some of the results that did come out of that, like some good impacts that came out of that campaign?
Yeah, I can start with the positive side. I think some positive parts of the organizing was we were able to make allies with some groups in Chinatown that are established that we didn't have in the past. There's a lot of organizations and a lot of people who care a lot about Chinatown, given its historic impact, and so CUCD is considered, like a very radical group that's coming in, or that's establishing itself in the neighborhood. And so we were able to really make connections with small property owners who receive the land from their families, who are really kind of relearning what's happening in Chinatown and trying to prevent the displacement and the sale of their property to larger developers. I think for us, what we've really learned from this campaign has been how much we need to dive into the actual property ownership that's happening in the neighborhood, because they're the key to the creation and maintenance of the bids and the support of the bids, and how a lot of those, since like the policing from the bid operates to fund and feel and support development. That's the end goal. They're trying to police and ostracize all the houseless residents to promote more development, to promote more property sales. So as we were targeting the bid and targeting George Yu, who already makes himself a very easy target by, you know, refusing to respond to public requests, public records requests, refusing to go to court, having warrants out for his arrest, you know, he makes himself a pretty visible target. But there's a whole insidious network, as you noted before, that includes the city, city council, city leaders, and also private property owners that are promoting and upholding this structure. So we're thinking of, you know, a long-term strategy, a long-term vision of how to really make the bid obsolete, and that right now is mostly in the research phase, and trying to figure out how we can organize when this pseudo neighborhood organization is run by and created by property owners who don't live or operate. And so it'll be interesting, I guess. We're trying to figure out like how to study and organize against LLCs, property owners, which is what we're realizing was a major vote besides LA City in the bid recertification.
Word, yeah, this is extremely critical work. So I just wanted to speak more broadly about why the analysis on bids is so important towards policing. But first we need to go, I'll be very quick about this because this is a large topic, but so bids kind of come out of this era, the Reaganomics era, trickle down economics, but also broken windows policing, where they kind of believe that blight and crime was a product of osmosis, and that if you're near some broken windows, that they're gonna just magically spontaneously generate based on the number of Black and brown poor people that are in the area, right? Also known as blight. And so they implemented these devices like urban renewal zones in order to push these blighted individuals in the buildings out of these downtown corridors and out of areas of downtown, you know, cities. And the results are basically what we have today: hyper gentrified neighborhoods, right? Where Black populations were pretty systematically pushed out to suburbs, or to the edges of cities rather. And so that's kind of where the origins of bids come from, is sort of those kinds of models of public policy planning. And the idea is that it puts together all the property owners within a zone. They either get taxed or feed, and they pay that to the city. The city then turns around and pays it to usually a 501c7, to what they call a private-public partnership. And they really make a muck and gray zone of like where the financial responsibility of everything is, right? Who takes accountability for the budgeting, who's auditable, all that is really nefariously hard to find out. You have to dig into every city basically on an individual level. So for here in Portland, we finally got an audit done, and that audit on what they call ESDs, or enhanced service districts, happened, also known as bids. And it was actually one of the first in the nation, right? And they got a national award for uncovering that there is absolutely no oversight for 20 years. There's no accountability. There's no outcome measurement for how private security interacted with people, et cetera, right? And so we only had 3 bids here in Portland, but throughout the rest of the country, there's you know, that literally thousands. LA, San Fran, and New York City and DC, well, mostly New York City, LA, and San Fran, they had the most bids out of any other individual city, right? And they're talking about hundreds and hundreds of millions being donated to police, being swapped in between each other, whereas we're only talking about like 10 to 15 million a year here in Portland. But this is a growing trend. So like these relics came out of the 80s into the 90s, and then they really start going like in the late 90s, where they started picking up a lot of money, a lot of property investment. They're based on gentrification. So like the more property value rises, the more money they get every year. So there's only this incentive to continue to gentrify, right? To hyper gentrify if they want to continue to exist within their spaces. And so the only reason RAP got involved, the only reason I got involved, is because we were running the Homeless Bill of Rights over and over, which would basically decriminalize homelessness, right? In different states, right? We were running it in Colorado, Oregon, and California. That's a whole nother story. But our main opposition kept being business improvement districts over and over and over and over again. They would fly out international shopping center association people. They would bring in all these consultants. They would spend millions of dollars to lobby against our campaigns. And we got shut down time after time after time, right? And so when we started looking into them, we started discovering that they have a super well-connected, cross-proliferating network across the nation where they ship ordinances around, where they communicate with multinational businesses. A lot of the coordinating is done through the International Downtown Association, known as IDA, but also a variety of consultants and networks of consultants and lawyers and international lawyers. And so they have this whole basically playing field of governance where they can just lobby as an entire body onto city councils to basically create anti-homeless ordinances for whatever zones that they control. And that's why there's ordinances in New York City that are very similarly constructed in LA, right? Camping bans, aggressive panhandling laws, stuff like that. And so through the last 15 years, these anti-homeless ordinances have gone up through the roof, like over 1,000% across the country, and they're getting worse and worse. And now homelessness is at an all-time high, mostly due in part to these hyper gentrifying forces that are at the whim, right? They themselves are just a cog, right? So bids themselves are just a cog because they are just an intermediary between multinational corporations and city councils, right? And they act like ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Committees, on smaller levels, but they themselves have a lot of power in doing that. And so they, you know, disrupting that disrupts this whole chain of neoliberal capitalism. Anyways, so I just wanted to stress how important this fight is. And that, yes, also they do some policing stuff, but like they super hyper like fun policing in downtown corridors. They create their own private police forces. They're basically privatizing the police, right? Through a series of moonlighting engagements where people get police get after hours like payments. What is this called? Where they're like hired at different shops and stuff. Whatever, like where they act as private security on their off hours, right? And they get like a bunch of extra money. But they also coordinate with all the security contractors, typically in downtown. There was a program called Smart Cities that started in LA that tried to come here in Portland. I think they're still trying to be here, but they were trying to organize all the private security camera networks into like one hub so that they had the beat, and then the city would have to come to them to be like, hey, what's going on over here, right? So they're all about privatizing everything and then basically bending the city to their will. So yeah, not to get too big and lofty and crazy about it, I'm gonna bring it back down. These fights are really important. And yes, so I will, however we can support y'all in Chinatown, because we're fighting it in our old town Chinatown here in Portland. But yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that information. And just, yeah, I'm just really grateful for folks who have been on today, and we will just check in with General Dogon and see if he's available to talk a bit more as well. But I'm just listening to folks and you all talking about the different fights and just sharing so much knowledge. We really appreciate that, and we definitely want to you know, not just today here, but to be continuing that fight and to be helping each other in that effort. And I agree. And so thank you so much, folks. And I will just pause and see if Dogon is able to connect.
Hey, Dogon, can you unmute yourself and see if you're available? Can you speak? I think he may be having phone or internet or some problem. So
He's been very persistent at calling back in.
yeah.
Yeah,
I just wanted to, can I ask a quick question of Victoria? I don't know, Benjamin, because this is very local to LA. This is the whole rehashing of criminalization, this LA Municipal Code 4118, which was just rehashed. So Victoria, I don't know if you're familiar with that, and just wanted to see, how do you see bids fitting into that enforcement, which is that, you know, I mean, this big case around Boise versus Idaho that set up a certain you know, restriction This was a federal court decision, and in LA, Jones' decision was there too back in the 2000s, which allowed these encampments to take place, and you can lay camp between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. in Skid Row, where we are based out of. But now 4118 has come back with a vengeance, where they're setting up these extremely restrictive zones. So how do you see the bids playing out into that whole drama now?
I think, I mean, we'll see how implementation works, but given our history with the bid in Chinatown, what we know is that the bid has a direct line to LAPD, and so if anything, we can foresee that the private security and the larger business improvement district complex can help LAPD shine a spotlight on specific individuals in the neighborhood, as well as specific locations to over police and over harass. We already have that just from the bid alone, but I can imagine that they'll use this to feel even more empowered to act with brutality against the houseless residents in Chinatown that they already consistently harass. We're still actively working with our neighbors and our community to see how we can better support houseless residents, but that is a conversation we still need to have about the new ordinance and how we think it'll change what's happening, if it'll exacerbate it, or if it'll what opportunities we have to better support our neighbors.
Generally, what I've seen is that bids on these kinds of issues, when it affects your districts, they tend to lobby and weigh in on private matters through private channels. Like our bid was just recently caught exceeding, not reporting their lobbying like over 1,000 times to the mayor's office, right? So there's probably a lot of back channel stuff happening that just isn't very apparent. I don't know how good y'all city auditor's office is, or your public records sort of stuff is, but most of our information came from like pretty much pitting the city against the city, because the city's not a monolith. There's occasionally a good person here or there. Finding those people and getting them to dig into the dirt and to find the nitty-gritty is often the only means besides, straight up kidnapping, blackmail, and surveillance tapping them, right? So yeah, which I'm not opposed to, by the way.
Thank you both.
Yeah, thanks so much, folks, for sharing. And just I'll just add to that, Hamid, that something that Victoria was saying reminded me of some of the emails that we actually obtained as a coalition, just looking at some of that back and forth and information sharing between the downtown bids and LAPD. Seeing some of those emails, it's exactly what you were talking about, Victoria, in terms of saying, well, we see, in this alley over here or at this location, we see people doing this. Does that fit this ordinance? And then the cop would respond back and say, well, if it's doing this, it is. And if it's not, then it might be this. So you see this this pattern of surveillance by the bid, checking in with police, like, is it this, is it that, and like looking for what is that ordinance that is going to be that fit, or what is that piece of information that they need to be able to enforce that ordinance. And it was just for removal. Like it was like, there's someone here, how do we remove them? What's that ordinance that's going to fit there? So so that was something that we uncovered that I'm sure folks are very aware has been going on, but you kind of see it documented in that way. Other information we saw was that LAPD would be sharing routinely things like top 10 lists of folks who had been previously arrested by LAPD in the area for just various different charges, and mainly to do with poverty in the downtown area. And they were just sharing their names and their pictures. And it was not because these folks were wanted for anything. It was just look out for these folks because they have stolen something in the past. So that was the kind of information that was being shared by bids as well. So kind of very person-based information. And they were also sharing crime maps and saying like sharing information about where LAPD was going to be patrolling that day. They would send to the bids maps with reset, where the reset police were going to be patrolling that day, well, which was exactly on Skid Row. And then like where the pred pole, the property crime.
Oops, I think we may have lost Tiff there. Hopefully they'll come back. Yeah, so we thank you both, Victoria and Caitlin. You know, we have been filing numerous public records as well, and bids are obviously the eyes and ears. But I mean, locally speaking, and I know that Dogon is not somehow connecting, but one of the first fights for the LA CAN, where we're based out of in Skid Row, was to disarm bids. And this was back in the 1990s, which you know, they were carrying weapons in Skid Row, and this is about 10 years before Broken Windows Policing and Safer Cities Initiative was implemented in Skid Row area. So yeah, that's an ongoing fight, and they continue to be. You know, there's about 60 plus bids in LA, so it's a monumental task, and with this new ordinances, they are going to be one of the main frontline folks for the LAPD. Sorry, Tiff, I was just kind of filling in. So just wrapping it up.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm sorry. I think I'm just having internet trouble as usual. Thanks so much. So yeah, I think with that, we should probably get moving to the next section, if that's okay with folks. I'm not sure if that's what you were coming to, Hamid, but I just really appreciate, again, all the information folks have been sharing, and that folks were able to join us tonight to talk about that. But otherwise, we will get moving on to our next section and our last section, and that is to talk a little bit about the use of art in the movement. And I believe we are still joined by three of our comrades, three of our coalition members and community members, three artists who are going to be talking a little bit more about this with us this evening.
Okay, so maybe I'll just pass it on to Mariela and Chela, since they were going to be talking about, and both of them have been doing some incredible street theater and you know, just shutting shit down, but shutting shit down with a clear message and kind of just a lot of community education and popular education involved in that. So take it away, Mariela and Chela.
Mariela, do you want to go first?
I will take that space because I do have to go soon, and I've been just grateful to be able to tune in during a whole drive, and it was really important to hear this conversation. And I'm here to share a little bit about art as a necessary part of our movement. I am mostly remembering that joining hands in Skid Row, showing up to Skid Row as a younger person, happened through using theater, and it was with this theater group, the shirt I happened to be wearing, Teatro East of the River. Most of us were from Boyle Heights, Lincoln Heights, somewhere east side of LA. And we were witnessing a push out of Black, Brown, Indigenous people that continuously has been a fight, a reality on the ground. So for me, art, theater, telling the stories in the street, telling them up close, right in front of the bid office, right where they need to be heard, is a really important part of getting free. And so I'm mostly just thinking about when I hear us in this conversation, just the type of art that is necessary and can help move this work. And I want to say thank you to all the work folks are putting on the ground and sharing right here. Victoria, Tiff, other person who shared, everybody. And my babies have arrived, so that is my time limit. I would love a longer conversation about this, and we'll be joining soon. I'm gonna pass it to you, Chela, and Nina too, who's gonna be sharing as well. Thanks, y'all. I'll be open to continuing another time. Bye.
Nina, do you want to go or do you want me to go?
Yeah, I can go next. Yeah, thanks, Mariela, as well for talking a little bit about how like the importance of arts. And I think I also want to just start by saying like it's important to be able to create your own narrative, especially because there's a lot of propaganda and there's from education to just a lot of information that we get as a society. It's a lot of it is things that have been normalized and not necessarily things that are keeping in mind the like our community's needs. And so definitely the use and the need for being able to create in community and to be able to tell our stories and to be able to reclaim that narrative is such an important part as well. And I think also understanding like I think Victoria talked a little bit about like the gentrification as well. And I just wanted to name as well art washing and how that's also plays a huge role in gentrifying of communities. And so even when you're looking at the history of housing, right, in LA, I think about like the struggles and the fights against the art washing that was taking place and the galleries that are consistently trying to purchase property or trying to start their art galleries in communities that, I mean, are considered or the city deems blighted communities. So I think that it's in thinking about that, it's also important. And I think also the key part of having community and having spaces, because a lot of the information that LAPD puts out, the city puts out, it's a lot of jargon and it's pretty, they use academic terms and they try to create this narrative, right? And so I know myself personally, it's really hard to kind of unpack that information. And so the need of having community spaces where you're able to kind of dive into the information, share, and kind of have that in community, as well as to be able to create things. But like the zine that Chinatown, or specifically the zine that was shared, the Chinatown Doesn't Need the Business Improvement District, and just zines in specific, how that could be used as a tool for popular education, as well as a community resource. And so figuring out ways to not only dismiss or kind of switch back that narrative, but also as a way of kind of putting our own information, our own narrative, and our own resources in community, and with the support and with specifically communities, the narrative that the community wants to put out there, because it's not always the one that is portrayed, or it's specifically one that's criminalized. So I do want to just name as well the need to push back against the art washing as well, and how that also plays a huge role. And I know with the bids as well, and even in Chinatown, because I know that there was a few. I don't know if Victoria, if you want to talk a little bit about that as well, but the gentrification, the art gallery as well, and that it's usually folks that aren't from the community, but they're continuing to do these things. So yeah, I think that's a key part in creating that content, but also to be able to do that in with arts and with music, but in community, and whether it's bringing a poster or being able to share zines, or even just creating content in like before an action, right? Being able to have posters or have banners as well. So different ways where you're able to also have the creative aspect in a system that's literally trying to kill you in one way or another. And I'll pass it on to Chela if you want to share a little bit about the teatro and the ways that you all have used as well arts and resistance.
Yeah. So I do want to acknowledge a few things. My name's Chella. I go by she and they. I live in Skid Row. I've lived here for the last 10 years, so I'm on the ground, living the shit that's on the ground, right? So I see bids ride their bikes every day that I go downstairs. That being said, I think for me, how I got involved with activism was through art. Was through I love theatro. I love the Spanish of it, like even though it's a colonial language. I love saying theatro because it does put that power in it. So like using your body as your art to reclaim your story and your narrative, as well as envisioning a world where for me safety is a big issue, right? Real safety is real, right? Imagining a world where somebody doesn't have to um beg or plead for the things that they need, right? Imagining a world where prisons and detention centers will fall, right? And I think theatrical and all types of art, but in my particular aspect, theatrical gives me that vision and it gives me that fire. I remember one of the plays we did was around the suspicion no the drones that we were doing. We did it with Catherine from the Catholic Workers. Rest in peace. She passed, but she was one of our members, and we did this, little scene around, around privacy and how drones would break that privacy. And we went from like the funny to the extreme. We went to talking about violence. Mariela was a part of that as well. Um, and I think that was just an amazing way to show because like some people don't know things until they see it, right? Sometimes I learn through seeing things. Um, yeah, so like that's I think there's power in seeing it, you know. I also want to talk about my band. I am in a all trans band. We started about 2 years ago, and we've been kind of growing strong even through the pandemic. We've been taking up spaces. We did, we just did a show in at the We Spa, if folks know about that situation, where transphobia was rampant. We took up space, and we were like, "Well, we're still fucking here, motherfuckers." And yeah, I think there's something powerful about reclaiming the narrative, as Nina said, and showing your own narrative. Because if we don't write our narratives, it's going to be written by white motherfuckers for us. And so yeah. So that being said, I think I'm done. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. But yeah, passing back to Tiff or Hamid.
Tiff, how's your connection? Can you speak? Okay.
Are you able to hear me, Hamid?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, yeah, I do apologize, folks. I think my wireless network just gave up on me there. But yeah, I was listening there and really appreciate what folks are sharing. And a question that is coming up for me, just in working with you all, something that I've been very appreciative of, and I don't think Mariela is any longer on the call, but is just like the use of art to be like engaging with each other and to be like as an activity, I think in some of the spaces or in some of our meetings. And I think that's something that's obviously a bit challenging for us right now in terms of having that kind of shared experience of you know, working on a banner or creating something together. That's maybe something that would be happening a bit down the road from now. But do you see opportunities for us to be doing that more? Like, I feel like it's something that we don't automatically go to or consider. And I guess I'm just thinking about what are some ways that we can perhaps be kind of bringing that in a bit more in terms of just the general activities that we're doing, or the ways that we are yeah, I guess so, just some of the activities that we're doing in meetings, or some of the ways that we're spending time together. Did you all have any thoughts on that, or any experiences with that?
I'm sorry, Tiff, can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I was really just thinking about, like, Nina, I'm not sure if you had any like experience or thoughts about in terms of how we could be incorporating art kind of more regularly into what we're doing together. Like when we're meeting together, a lot of it is very it's very focused on a certain type of way of working together, a certain type of activity. And it's less kind of integrating our creative senses or that side of us. So I guess I'm just thinking about, like, do you have any thoughts about that, or is that something that you all try to do in different spaces that you're in terms of kind of incorporating art or art activities more into the work that you're doing?
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's really important, and as well, like I wasn't trained in the arts, and a lot of it came from just going to actions and just seeing the like not only gentrification, but any system or a lot of the systems that the settler colony normalizes. So a lot of it comes from like community analysis. So from kind of being in those spaces and then knowing that there was like the narrative that the city was creating, or the narrative that the LAPD creates. And so the need to have to address that, especially in a space where there's rampant art washing and there's gentrification, and then even within what art gets legitimized or what art gets told that it's legitimate, because in a gentrified area, right, a mural is considered, or a whitewashed or art washed mural is considered legitimate, but not for specific communities. And so definitely the need to have autonomous spaces as well, but also being able to learn and share. And I think that that's done in community. And I think that, like, not a lot of us, especially if you're broke, right? If you're working class, we don't have access to a lot of the expensive art programs or the art spaces. And so being able to create stuff in a low budget, but just having that space to be able to like have mutual exchanges as well. And if you do have, like, if you have a resource, or if you have a specific, if you are really good at drawing, or if you're really good at lettering, or if you're really good at breaking down or looking at the pieces, I think the really important part is that everyone has a role in creating and in reclaiming that narrative. So I do definitely think that it happens in community, especially if yeah, it will happen in community.
And there's some hands up, but I don't know if Tiff can see them on the phone.
Yep.
So, Brother
Right.
Pan, you want to go ahead? I see your hand, then I can go to.
Yeah, I would like to make mention, I'm somewhat of an artist, if you call it, do re mi's, but experiencing as a small boy, the civil rights movement, watching it like the March on Washington back in the 60s, and the various artists that really captured the movement and was able to articulate it through music and by their graphic artists, many murals. I look at Bob Dylan, Nikki Giovanni, Nina Simone, I believe, and Mahalia Jackson, young Stevie Wonder. They weren't being paid that much, but they were on the front lines. And music, arts is very, very powerful, to move us. And especially when our content, when our message is right on, it doesn't deviate, but it really captures. So I think we get those drums, let's drown them out. Their messages, let's let our message be heard. And I think we got to hit them, like I said, with everything we got. Let's bombard them. Is that all right, Hamid?
Yes, sir. I was just letting folks know that you are one of the main Skid Row Freedom Singers. So absolutely, brother.
Oh, thank you, Hamid. All right.
Yeah, and I was gonna add, I mean, about the music. I mean, yeah, whenever the Freedom Singers are at like an event or an action or rally or anything, it just sets like a totally different tone and energy, and yeah, like I think it's kind of getting a little bit of what people are sharing about just like the role of art in those kinds of when we all come together for political mobilizations or to start shit or to whatever. And I was thinking about that. I thought part of your question, Tiff, might have been also about like, okay, how do we kind of do that these days with, especially with difficulty being inside and stuff like that. And I think, I mean, Nina had mentioned like even just before protests, like kind of getting together to make signs and banners and art like that. And I think it's worth thinking about, even for all of our work, especially with things like surveillance that can be kind of abstract and hard to put your hands on, to maybe think of like doing kind of, and this is easy to do outdoors, like in a park or parking lot or whatever, like kind of just community sessions to be either making like stencils or banners for banner drops or posters or whatever. And I mean, that can be, like when I've been able to be in spaces like that, it's a great activity to be doing while also like talking about, like the whatever kind of political analysis or whatever you're putting onto the page of the stencil or whatever. And it's like kind of, you can have a range of ages and stuff like that. So I think it's worth thinking about, like, that's actually, it's kind of, you can't do that on Zoom. And you don't really need to do that in person. So it's kind of a good, outdoor way to something to do during the pandemic.
If I could just quickly share, I just posted a link to one of the zines, and this is basically, folks can see that who are on the computer, the Building Power Against the War on Youth. This was done by our comrades, Baby Anarchist, and in partnership with Palestinian Youth Movement and Gender Justice LA and the Youth Justice Coalition. So, and it's, if you go to the website, there's a whole printable zine and online. So this is, again, just kind of, just as a part of popular education, but also not only popular education, but building that power. And so creating echoes out there through art. I don't know, Joe, Nina, if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So the zine, so the War on Youth, or specifically, so this scene that we worked, and kind of what we spoke about a little bit, it happens right in community, right? So having the conversations with folks and being able to dive into specifically, well, this one is building power against the war on youth, and looking at the kind of that legacy and that history of what I call, or kind of what I think Bell Hooks kind of also labeled it as adult supremacy, and how like children aren't really considered autonomous beings or autonomous folks. And so part of it is creating that narrative. And so through the being able to create those narratives and being able to create images also helps in gathering and creating that story and creating that narrative. But also it's if it's really text heavy, it's even if it's good work, it's also sometimes inaccessible. And so making sure that we also weave creativity and that history of arts in movement has always existed. And I think if your work isn't, or if your art isn't kind of showing what's going on, then it's not really, you're not really focusing on community, and you're not really doing the job of being able to create and being able to like have that specific legacy of resistance. And so in that, it's just being able to create snapshots or to be able to create small little images. But whether it's music, whether it's art or banners or whatever it is, I think it's being able to create not just for capitalism, but being able to create to fucking dismantle shit and to talk about the reasons why we're getting together. So I think in having like joyous rebellion and by being able to have music and being able to have artists as well, I think that's such a, I think in any movement, I think arts plays a huge role in being able to kind of make sure that we are creating that narrative and being able to say, this is our story and this is where we're at, because we don't really have many opportunities to be able to do that. And so being able to create and being able to have something where we're able to have it in community, I think is really important. And then one other thing that I want us to mention as well is, and I think Tiff had asked about ways that folks can support. So right now we are also in conversations about creating a zine as well for the Echo Park report back, which if folks would be interested or want to kind of connect and see the work regarding the LAPDs. It's in response to LAPD's After Action, Echo Park After Action report. And so if anyone would want to plug in or kind of is interested in like the creation of the process of creating a zine, please feel free to send us an email or to reach out to us so that we can connect you all with that process and the zine making. But also I wanted to say, if you would want to support Chela's work as well, I'm going to post here at the bottom the Venmo account for Chela as well, if you would want to support their work. And it's really critical work. So if you do have at least $5 too, I think it's also really important to support, especially autonomous folks and people that are in community that are creating this and doing this for the people.
Thank you all. Art is just such a critical function in building that cultural resistance. Absolutely. So do folks have any, Tiff just and I just exchanged texts and their phones just kind of messing up. So they asked me if I could close out. So anyone has any other thoughts about their you sharing art and how they bring art into building this cultural resistance and movement building? We got a couple minutes. Okay, anybody has any announcements of anything going on? Cool. Well, so go ahead, Nina. You were going to say something? You are muted. Oh, I thought, Nina, you were going to make a comment. Sorry. Okay. Well, these are just the fun of having these conversations online. So, but hopefully we'll go hybrid, but really appreciate folks from all the way up in Portland joining us. And that's been really the upside of having these conversations. Really appreciate you all taking the time. Then we've been connecting with folks, in our gender and sexuality fight, we've had when organizers from different parts of the world, even as far as Saudi Arabia, a trans activist joining us, and people from South Africa, from different parts of Europe, so and even Middle East as well, and South Asia. So this has been really a good forum, but just as organizers, missing that in-person vibe and that community building definitely, and over having some samosas or chaat or something like that. So breaking bread is always one of the key things. But I want to thank everybody for joining us. Please, if you want to join the work, please hit us up at stoplapdspying@gmail.com or on social media at stoplapdspying. So absolutely, thank you, Nick. So that's like, I don't know what so this is the equivalent of FDP, so FKUSG, Deep State Complex. So fuck the U.S. government, deep state, definitely. So we'll keep on building this fight. We'll keep on building this culture of resistance. We thank you very much. Our next meeting, since this was the 4th Tuesday, and there is a 5th Tuesday, but I'm not going to propose having a meeting. Otherwise, because knowing me, I'm going to say, let's have another one. So maybe we'll skip this next Tuesday and circle back on the 1st Tuesday of September, which is September 7th. And that's going to be our webinar conversation meeting. And that's more of a working group session with the gender and sexuality working group. So please join us, because, the working group is looking to explore that how do we expand our outreach? How do we broaden the scope? What is the role of surveillance, particularly when it comes to gender and sexuality? So please join us in that fight, and hopefully we'll see some of you on the 7th. In the meantime, please be safe and healthy, and sending a lot of love. And we will see you around soon. Thank you. Have a good night.